Creative Magic Club. What's up? This is Sarah Mack and welcome to Creative Magic Club. Together, we'll discover inspirational stories of creative entrepreneurs living out their dreams, doing the work they are most passionate about, and building wealth in magical and fun ways. While building a six-figure income as a writer and coach, helping other women to launch their dream businesses, I've connected with so many incredible people and seen it proven again and again that you can thrive financially doing whatever it is you are passionate about. I'm here to share life-changing strategies for mindset, making money, and reaching more people with your work in a business and life filled with creativity, freedom, and fun. Welcome everyone and welcome to my very special guest, Charlene Rymsha, who I'm super excited to talk to today. Charlene is a psychotherapist, a burnout recovery coach and author. She's the founder of Everyday Coherence, where she supports ambitious and creative professionals to overcome burnout without sacrificing their relationships, paycheck or freedom. And hi, welcome Charlene. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you. Yay. Thanks for having me on.
So I'm Charlene and I met when I was a copy coach in another program with Geeta Nadkarni. And Charlene was a client of that course where she was developing her program and her messaging around supporting millennials with burnout. So that's where we met. And I was living in Montreal at the time. Then I moved to New York. Then we got to hang out in person, which was such a treat. Charlene is amazing. And then I actually joined her burnout recovery program as somebody who has struggled with patterns of burnout in the past. And I got to experience all of her incredible wisdom and tools. And it was an incredible experience. So we've been collaborating for a long time. She's really amazing. And I'm super excited to share a story with you today about how she went from developing her messaging and getting clarity around that to getting massive exposure, which eventually landed her a book deal. So it's a really cool story. You're really going to love it. If you are interested in becoming an author, this is a story that you're really going to enjoy. So Charlene, why don't we like rewind all the way back to the beginning? Tell me about that turning point where you decided to commit to the direction of supporting creatives with burnout. Like, how did you fall into that?
Yeah. So when I created the company, Everyday Coherence being the coherent communication between body and mind and doing everyday practices until body and mind connection becomes their everyday. And so I didn't know exactly who I was going to help. I just knew that with a background in working with people who have traumatic stress that affects the body and the mind in very specific ways, and working with people with anxiety, depression, many of them adolescents, but also emerging adults and adults and families. I knew that I really wanted to create a body-based approach to healing and recovery. Yet I wasn't even quite sure what it looked like, who I was trying to target. It was sort of the idea was anybody, all humans could benefit from my program, which to some degree, I still think that that's true. But especially as a business and starting a new business, it's like, okay, who am I really trying to reach? And so that's when I got more clear when I was working with you as my wonderful copy coach in Geeta's program of going, okay, right, what do I really have here going on? Okay, yes, chronic stress is very similar to traumatic stress. Chronic stress affects a lot of people. And it was right around the time that the BuzzFeed article came out. I can't remember the woman's name at the moment. I'm spacing on the author's name. But basically she provided light to the fact that millennial burnout, basically millennials were the burnout generation. And she gave amazing, an amazingly in-depth explanation of all the different psychosocial, biological, all the different factors that come into it. And I also, as a psychotherapist, was seeing clients of that age group. And although I was more treating them for anxiety and adjustment disorders and that kind of stuff, I realized, oh yeah, all right, I can see the burnout patterns in my clients. And then as I started to really look farther out and read about it and meet more people and talk with more people, I realized, oh yeah, this is like a real big problem. This is basically like a modern day joy suck that really affects a tremendous amount of people. And I realized, okay, well, this all makes sense. I want to be able to help a tremendous amount of people. It's a very specific thing. It's a very specific age group and, or swath of the population, so to speak. And really everyone with burnout really deserves to live a life that is free of all of that. So that's how I ended up coming to that.
Amazing. I love that. We'll move on to talking about how you ended up writing your book. But as a sidebar, I just want to talk, as somebody who's personally experienced your method, how important and valuable it is that it's a body-based approach. And I love that what you teach is so simple. And on your Instagram, you have your, get out of the head into your body, those constant reminders, those little short reminders. And for me, as somebody who is always up in my head, I'm always thinking and looking for solutions and like devouring information. And that is just not how you cure burnout. And going through your program and really having that experience of going into my body and realizing there's a reason why I'm not in there half the time, because it's really uncomfortable, and sort of going through that learning curve and allowing yourself to process that stress and release it is like literally the only way that you can get out of those patterns. So yeah, it's super, super simple but powerful, your approach. I really love it. So talk to me a little bit about your journey in kind of getting that clarity on your messaging, and then you really like went all out taking what you learned in Geeta's program. She's a really amazing publicist, and really leveraging the press and the media to get your message out there. And tell me like how that unfolded and what that experience was like for you.
Yeah, it was a very cool experience, and also a vulnerable one. So with Geeta's program, we have a huge list of media contacts that we can reach out to. So right there you get, like the list, you downloaded them into my email campaign software and was like, okay, I've got like the list, but now I actually have to create like pitches, right? And so, we also learned, of course, in Geeta's program, the ways to really to pitch a story, right? Because you want to give just enough information. You don't want to give a whole bunch of information, but kind of streamlined, but really catchy and getting to the point type of a thing. And so I started sending out pitches every couple of weeks or so, I think once every 2 weeks. And it was an interesting, again, vulnerable experience where it's like, okay, I'm hitting send. Okay, see what happens kind of a thing, and like, of course, a lot of people ignore you, which is to be expected. A few answer back saying, not interested, but thank you. A few others saying, don't ever pitch to me again. Okay, and then, so like the first couple of pitches I received, responses like that. And then I started to receive people, occasionally saying, yes, we're interested in you. And so basically first was radio, which was wonderful. Well, first magazines and then radio. And what was interesting about that, which shall I dive into the magical story aspect piece of it that heads towards the book at this point, or shall? Okay.
Got it. It's such
great.
a story.
So we love it. And what's kind of funny, as I was checking in with Sarah, I went, oh my gosh, I had completely forgotten about that magical story. This is like a year later, but then remembering it, it's like, oh yeah, that was like super magical. So everyone's now on the edge of their seat going, what's the magic? Tell me. So I had, actually it was 3 pretty much back-to-back radio, what do you call it? Radio appearances. One of them, the first one was recorded, so it wasn't live. It was for NPR. And then I listened to it after the fact, and he announced me as, a burnout recovery coach and author. And I was like, oh, well, I'm not an author, but I am a burnout recovery coach, and it's already been pre-recorded. So, okay, I'm just going to like leave it be. I'm not going to bother emailing them and saying, sorry, you got it wrong kind of thing. I just left it be, right? The next one, about a week and a half later, I did a live radio talk show early in the morning, and they announced me as, a millennial burnout expert and author of a book about burnout. And his first question was, what got you to decide to write a book about burnout? And again, it's live, right? So I was like, oh, and I said, well, to be quite honest with you, I'm not writing a book about burnout. I said, maybe someday I will, right? But at this moment, I think somehow the information got crossed and no, I'm not writing a book, and then the interview went on. And then about a week or so later, I was doing a live for another radio. And before we went on live, he said to me, like in the, the backstage, whatever it's not the green room, but whatever it's called when you're in backstage. And he said, okay, so you're a burnout recovery coach and author of a new book. And I was like, I don't know where this information is, necessarily coming from. Nowhere on my website did I say that I was, an author. Nowhere in the pitch did I say that I was authoring a book. But it was the third person calling me an author of, a burnout recovery book. So I did say, no, I'm not authoring a book. So when we went live, he didn't say, and author of an upcoming book, right? Although he actually might have still called me I think he still called me an author, and then we just didn't focus on that piece, right? So that all happened in June, July. I think most of it was actually in July of this last year, so 2019. And then about beginning of August, maybe like August 3rd or 4th, I was, on my Everyday Coherence IG account, and I see someone had slipped into my DM, as I believe people say, and so it was in the DM where it was asking like it was whatever it's called, where it's like the hidden ones where you can say yes to see it or not, kind of a thing, because we weren't connected, we didn't have a connection. And 9 times out of 10, when you click on it, for me anyways, it's been like something like a site kind of promoting like young women, pornographic, like stuff that's like, get out of here, reject, goodbye kind of a thing, right? It had never been something that I actually was like not offensive or yeah, it definitely wasn't a book deal, right? And so right, so it was an editor from a publishing company, Quarto Publishing, and initially I kind of had like the reaction of a slight chip on my shoulder, ready to like read this thing. And I was like, what? And then I started reading it, and basically he was like, burnout, I recognize that burnout is, it is a major issue, mental health, physical health, all of that combined, a very timely and important topic. And he had been researching who might be, an author for a book for their publishing company. And he happened upon my Instagram account while doing the research, and he loved like my voice and my approach, and asked me if I'd be interested in having a conversation about authoring a book with him, a book for the publishing company. And so I was, oh, okay, that's pleasantly exciting and validating of all the work that I've been putting in. And immediately, at that time anyways, I thought back to the 3 people over the last month that said, and author Charlene Rymsha. So that was, then we go on and, we have a phone call and a few meetings, and then I sign the contract and I write the book. But anyways, I will stop there at the moment. So that's how the contract for the book ended up arising.
Amazing. It was like very clear instructions from the universe, like before you were even aware that this was something that was coming up for you. And how long did it take you to write your book? I think you knocked it out in about 8 weeks or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, it was wild. And so, yeah, by the time that the contract came in and I was, and I signed it, it was the end of September, and October 1st was the first day that I was going to actually start writing. And in the contract, I needed to get the first draft manuscript to them by November 26th. Just based on right. So it's like the writer does the whole manuscript, and then there's a longer editing process and all that kind of stuff. But especially because burnout is such an important topic now, the publishing company, was saying, let's get it out as quickly as possible. So never having written a book, never considering myself much of, a writer necessarily. And it was also, I was just starting my next 6-week burnout recovery program pretty much at that same time. So it was an interesting couple of months, to say the least. And basically, yeah, I just wrote an entire book, 337,000 words plus. I was contracted for minimum of 37,000, and I think I got it was 37,800 by the time that I submitted it to them. And about a week before the deadline, I emailed my editor and was like, I don't know if I'm going to make the deadline. This just doesn't seem physically possible. I've been writing 8 hours a day, every single day. And, and so he got back to me, and I was given a week extension, which the week extension to me felt like Christmas time with all the presents. I was like, phew. So it gave me just a little breathing room to finish it. And so, yeah, I submitted it December 4th or something like that.
Wow, what an amazing year. So you started out with this idea of helping the whole world with burnout. That must have been when we connected in the spring or earlier in the year, really focused on doing that in-depth work and honing your messaging, getting really specific, getting really strategic with getting your message out there, getting a bunch of press, and then landing a book deal and writing the entire book before the year was over. How powerful was that?
Yeah, totally wild. Yeah, if someone had said to me any of those things, but particularly you're going to write a book before the end of this year, I'd be like, no, that's not going to happen. No.
Powerful, specific messaging. I love it. So tell me a little bit about the book. What is one main message or idea that you was kind of the inspiration for this journey that you're just really passionate about and that you wish more people could hear?
I'd say two main things. The main piece, and we kind of alluded to it at the beginning, is really learning how to inhabit our bodies for joy, inner peace, and internal and external prosperity. We spend so much time from the neck up, and of course what I mean is not our physical head, but our minds. And from an early age, we're really taught that the intellect is what, it takes primacy. It is what helps us succeed in life. It's what, gets us through the exams. It's what the reports are done on. And just everything that tends to be a marker for success is equated to the intellect for the most part. And so everybody stays up in their heads and, thinking. And then that, of course, because the brain's real good at thinking, overthinks and then creates problems and, anxiety and all this sort of stuff. And then we stay in our heads trying to come up with solutions of how to not overthink. But the truth is we can't really do that by just thinking ourselves out of overthinking. That just ends up being more thinking. And certainly the mind's powerful, and there's ways to work with the mind and the mindset, of course, and people are becoming more and more aware of, mindset. And of course, a lot of what you do is mindset work. So the mind is important, or the brain is important, but also it's a connection of the body and the brain, right? I tend to use the words mind and brain interchangeably, but the truth is that, the mind, could very well and arguably be, and many people say that the mind is the whole being, right? That it's the intelligence of the body and the brain that help to create the mind. I'm going off on a little tangent there, but anyways, is really helping people get out of their thoughts as much by really tuning in and tapping into the wisdom of their body. So as you were saying, I have a weekly video. It's a 1-minute video on Instagram called Be in Your Body, and really just a quick video every single week that offers a tool of how to get out of your head and into your body, right?
Yeah. And I'm going to run with that tangent because I know that you obviously you have the practices that you teach. And I know that, you're always experimenting with, new mindset and meditation approaches. So I'm curious if you could share maybe one turning point for you and your journey with your own personal health, wellness, connection to self, and, clarity around what it is that you really wanted in your life. Was there like a particular turning point where you either shifted a belief or you stumbled across a particular practice that really changed things for you? What comes to mind for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't have an exact like moment necessarily in mind, but through I'd say 20 plus years of practicing yoga, being very body based and quieting the mind in that way, that's how I kind of learned about mindfulness, by mindfully doing yoga and focusing on my breath and my body as the focal points for a mindfulness practice. Again, doing that for many, many years, a couple of decades. Along with, I lived out west in the mountains and would ski all the time. I'd do like 140 days of downhill skiing. And then when there was no snow, I would downhill mountain bike. And so you need to be focused on the present moment and what the heck is going on with your body. So I learned without realizing it how important the connection between the mind and the body was, and always had been interested in personal development, mental wellness. I myself, starting at about 17 to 24, suffered from depression, a pretty kind of like a mild to moderate, but ongoing, persistent depression. These days they call it dysthymia. And so at that time, back then, I was like, okay, I don't want to be depressed for the rest of my life, so I need to make changes. So that was sort of my wellness journey, kind of decision to move forward in that. But what really got me sort of moving in the direction that I am now is realizing, and this was about 10 years ago or so, that when you can quiet the mind of all the excessive thoughts, and when you can calm the body down and, release the stress and all that kind of stuff, then once everything's quieter, you can actually hear the inner wisdom and amazingness of the energy of the body. And for me, it felt like this effervescent bubbling of joy, just this internal joy that was like eternal and just lived inside of me. And I'm sure that my ideas came from, reading books and different stuff, but I have no idea where to pinpoint exactly. It just became very clear to me that joy, that effervescent energetics of joy was actually spirit, was source, was the universe. And so I was like, okay, I've kind of tapped into something, right? Where it's like, no matter what's going on out there, if there's relationship strife, if there's, trouble with the job or whatever it is, when you can feel centered and whole in your body, and then there's this effervescence of joy coming in, then it's so much easier to stay grounded in who you are and feel less affected by the external forces. So that was really when I realized that the joy, that the strength, the groundedness and joy that comes from the inside out was really the beginning of me directing it, going, I really want to figure out how to share this with people.
I love that. Yeah. And I can really attest to that too. Like, you are such a joyful human. And I've seen Charlene when she has been going through the stress of like having to crank out her first book in a very short period of time. And she's really, really committed to her practices. And even when she's experiencing stress and like being an entrepreneur, being a writer and an author, she's 100% committed to joy every single day. And I think that's also a really important point, especially because, it's maybe, not easy, but when you are you are skiing all the time, like your life is geared towards being present in your body. So when you make that transition to writing or to being an entrepreneur, I know you moved your practice from seeing people one-on-one to seeing people virtually. And this is such an important point that comes up, has been a real game changer for me, and that I'm always talking about within entrepreneurial communities and my clients, is the importance of having a movement practice every single day, because it is like, there's no shortcut. There's nothing that can replace it, especially when we're very like technology and screen focused. That's all up in the head. So there's nothing that replaces just those practices that really get us into our body and connect us into the present moment. Same for me, yoga. I love yoga. And I think that's why I was particularly drawn to music as a complementary practice. Just even though I suck at it, playing the guitar, you have to focus, because as soon as you don't focus, it doesn't sound good and you notice. So it really brings, or singing, being really present in the body. It's so important to have some type of complementary practice like that when you are a screen-based or a like chair-based human in your work and your job. So thank you so much for sharing that. And so what is what part of your work do you love the most?
Good question. Let me see. Through this past year and through the stresses and through like the struggles, but also connecting to my body, etc. Right? It's like I really kind of had to evaluate that over and over again and say, like, what's important here? What matters? And what really helped me was I was able to go, okay, what matters is, yes, my health and my joy, sure, yes. But what really matters is being able to deeply connect with my clients and really deeply connect with my clients and really appreciate them. I think it's so important to recognize that we're both bringing value to the table. I'm becoming a stronger leader, facilitator, whatever we want to call me, coach, by working with them, and they're of course receiving the benefits that I'm able to offer them. And so, just remembering that it's really, there's a lot of reciprocity, and to really make sure that I appreciate them coming to me and really honoring the fact that they've chosen to work with me. I mean, it takes huge courage to make big changes. So just in and of that. That it's like my clients and humans and anyone that chooses to get coaching or therapy is, really just like an amazing, courageous, human warrior, if we want to call it warrior at the moment. But yeah, just really remembering to not take anything for granted. I can sometimes, and then that's when things don't really align and don't feel as good. So really remembering to appreciate my clients.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us today. And for those who are interested in learning more about your work, what's the next step for them to do that?
Yeah. So they can certainly check out my website, everydaycoherence.com. There's actually a great starter video there and some other information, and you can access my radio recording broadcast and all that kind of good stuff. And then you're on YouTube. I'm on Facebook at Body Mind EC, and then I'm also on Instagram at Everyday Coherence.
Amazing. So be sure to go and check out Charlene's work. I'll drop the links below. And thank you so much for sharing your magical journey to becoming an author on creative burnout with us, Charlene. And we'll see more of you soon. I'm very sure of that.
Thank you, Sarah, so much. Yes. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
For more inspirational content, head over to my website withsarahmac.com and please support the show by liking, commenting, and subscribing.